Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Laura. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. Today's episode is another solo episode around toxic bosses. This episode's on the 3 brutal types of toxic bosses. This is an area of research and helping organizations and people that I'm passionate about. I see way too many toxic bosses out there, and there's all different types of them. But the main thing is, how do we identify them? How do we see the warning signs? How do we navigate when we're having to work for these toxic bosses? And how do we exit and recover? So I am writing a book on this topic that I'm super excited to get out into the world in 2025. I've written other books before, but this one will be all about toxic bosses. And I've done a research project with people who have reported to toxic bosses throughout North America. And I'm continuing that research because there's just so much more to be learned, especially since the pandemic and with all that's happening in the world. These toxic bosses are out there. They're in all different industries, and they're causing damage not only to people's mental health and well-being, which is hugely important, but it's also causing damage to organizational success and performance. People are not at their best when they're reporting to a toxic boss. In fact, it depletes their energy. It depletes their creativity and innovation. They live in a state of fear with high anxiety, and their self-esteem and confidence gets eroded over time. All these things, brutal. So I've been doing articles on this, speaking on this, and today I'm going to share with you 3 brutal types of toxic bosses from my research. There are more than 3 types, but I decided today I would focus on these particular types. And perhaps you are working for one of these types, or someone in your network or family has the unfortunate experience of working for this type of boss. And a toxic boss does not necessarily have to be one persona. There can be different behaviors, different styles. So as I'm talking about these 3, I want you to think, does the toxic boss that I know of or work for, do they fit into one or more of these 3 personas? Maybe, maybe not, but I would love to hear from you. So persona number 1 of a brutal toxic boss is the dishonest manipulator. So the dishonest manipulator is inherently a dishonest person. So they are so used to lying that lying becomes part of their DNA. They create an environment of mistrust in their team because of this chronic lying. And they're very adept at playing both sides. So they'll say one thing to you and then say the opposite thing to someone else on your team. But each time it sounds like the truth because they're very good at manipulating the truth. And why do they lie? Well, lying can become a habit the more you get used to doing so. But the reasons why toxic bosses lie are primarily to get ahead, to make themselves look better, to achieve what they want to achieve, to protect people they like, which are usually people who have their toxic backs, or to look good or manage up to their higher ups. So to impress senior executive, to impress the board, whoever it is that they report to, they are lying to look good. This is a very difficult type of boss because it's almost impossible to call them on it, because if you do call them on the lying, they do not appreciate it. They'll manipulate their way into throwing you under the bus. I've seen this in my research. I've seen this in my practice, where someone has called out the leader's manipulative or, lying behavior. And then what happens is they get packaged out. So do not trust the leader. Do not trust this toxic boss with anything that's confidential. The dishonest manipulator will break confidences. If it helps them get what they want, they do not hold confidence or confidentiality to any standard. And they'll speak negatively about others behind their backs as well as you. So one of the warning signs is when they're gossiping and talking badly about one of your teammates or one of their peers, another leader. Well, that vice president is doing a lousy job. This type of toxic gossip is a sign that they are a dishonest manipulator and not to be trusted. And know this, that they may be talking about you next month. So they tend to have their victims that they focus their negative energy on, and it will move around to different people in the organization. So the dishonest manipulator is, again, very sneaky, very two-faced. They can put on the charm. They can be very believable and, very kind when they want something. And this messes with people's minds because when they are so nice, it is so easy to think, well, maybe they're changing. Maybe they do appreciate me now. Maybe I, overreacted to some of their earlier behaviors. But chances are you didn't, because past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. And just have your guard up. Be careful, because these types of bosses are not genuine, nor are they authentic. So their words will not match their actions. And what happens is they can be passive aggressive. So they may not tell you they're upset with you, but then they stun you by the betrayal. And the betrayal can be letting you go suddenly or throwing you under the bus in a situation so you look bad, or taking your information and using it as their own. Again, very dishonest and manipulative behavior that can leave you shocked and stunned. But most difficult is the betrayal, the feeling of betrayal. So again, if you think you have a toxic, manipulating boss, just be very, very careful. Be cautious not to trust them. Be careful with what you share with them, and do not talk about anyone else with them or feed into that behavior. But again, you're not going to be the favorite if you don't feed into the behavior. So you have to protect your career and really focus on how you're going to survive and how you're going to thrive post dishonest manipulator, which I will get into in future episodes. I'll get into in my book, but hopefully this was a taste of one of the 3 brutal types. Number 2 of these 3 brutal types is the great divider. So the great divider thrives at causing dissension and conflict in the team. They're very skilled at pitting people against one another. So they will form silos, they'll form conflicts between people. And this creates a psychologically unsafe work environment with an undercurrent of fear. People are living in fear. And if you're a manager, they will pit you against your direct reports sometimes. And that can be very difficult. It puts you in such a difficult position. And I know of a situation where this happened, where someone was a manager, and the toxic boss went behind her back and pitted one of her employees against her and was having them compete for resources. And he was giving this person permission to attend a certain event where the manager should have been the one to make the call, not her boss. But the boss undermined her authority, went behind her back, and then created a very difficult situation. Was it the person who reported to her's fault? No, it put that person in a really difficult situation too. So it's a very triangulation, we call it. It's a triangulation behavior, and it damages those relationships. It damages trust, and it causes toxic competition. Toxic competition is when you are harming someone else in order to get ahead. You are harming someone else, and that's not healthy competition. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I think competition's a really healthy thing for human motivation when it's the right kind of competition and when it's in an environment where we're supporting one another. And I think the greatest type of competition is when the whole team is working towards something and they're all putting in their talents and strengths to get to the other side. And so they're competing against the outside world, against other organizations to get ahead, to create, to thrive. And they're not pitted against each other. So back to the great divider, they like to choose their favorites. So they have their favorites, and they have an in-group and out-group. And the favorites tend to be people who are similar to them. So they don't love diversity, by the way, and people who are friends of theirs. So these types of bosses are known to hire their friends, to promote their friends, and to make promotion decisions based on someone they like versus who may be the best fit for the job. And this, again, can be very dangerous. It can cause feelings of unfairness and dissension among the team. They will reward their favorites and they will punish their non-favorites by removing supports, taking away opportunities or perks, and not compensating them in the same way if they're in the out group. So they will shut out and marginalize people in the out group. So this great divider really thrives on causing this friction and dissent. And it's almost like a dictator in terms of if they can divide the people, then the people won't be able to stand up as a whole against them because the team is focused on their own conflicts and, living in fear of losing out or losing resources. So the toxic boss ends up maintaining control this way, much like a dictator does. So if you think you're working for or know someone who is working for a great divider, know that they can really impact your career growth and your development and even your job. So you need to seriously consider moving on to another role in the organization or another organization. And I know this may seem insurmountable at times, but it's the people who have moved on from my research who said, I wish I had moved on sooner. Knowing what I know now, things all worked out. The universe aligned for me, and I'm glad I left. I just wish I had done it sooner because the negative impacts stayed with me for a while, and it took me a while to recover. The longer you stay working for a toxic boss, the longer it takes to recover. So the final of these three brutal types of toxic bosses, of which there are many more, but these are three to share with you today, is the unethical corrupter. So the unethical corrupter is the toxic boss who lacks integrity to the point of corruption. So their behaviors are not just about lying, like the dishonest manipulator is about lying. This type of toxic boss is more corrupt. So not only are they lying, but they're unethical. They are misrepresenting a product, or they're doing inaccurate financial reporting. They're tampering with survey results. They are manipulating situations to get their way. Maybe they're manipulating the board with false information. I mean, these are all things that are helping them get ahead, and it can be helping them get ahead financially. So they're trying to pad their pocketbooks by lacking integrity, maybe double dipping, taking advantage of perks or financial situations for their own gain. They may also be serving their own promotion. So they'll be unethical in how they are climbing to the top. So maybe they are throwing people under the bus. Maybe they're breaking confidential information in order for them to get ahead. And it's very, very corrupt. They could be stealing from the organization. So my research has examples of this. So someone stealing and funneling funds or perks or benefits to themselves. And it also can be time. So it may not just be money, but they are stealing time. So stealing time would be taking the paycheck, the big fat paycheck of being a senior leader, and then not doing your job, letting other people do your job, but taking the credit for it, and maybe doing something else with your time, maybe going on a lot of fishing trips, maybe taking a lot of time working on a side hustle while you're in this leadership role. And it is really corrupt to be doing that with the resources of any company. And they'll expect people to cover for them. They'll expect their employees to cover for them and definitely not question them. So if you have the value of ethics and integrity and you question them in some way or flag something, this type of boss will become inflamed at you. They will try to throw you under the bus, to let go of you, to gaslight and make you feel it's about you, that maybe you misunderstood and you didn't get it, and it's about you. Why can't you be smarter? Why can't you be more insightful? But in your gut and in your heart, you know that they are corrupt. You know that this smells fishy. This is not smelling right. There's something going on that's bad. Trust your instincts, trust your intuition. The unethical corrupter may also practice discriminatory hiring practice, such as asking illegal questions when they're hiring people, questions about their family. Oh, are you planning to have a baby? I mean, that question is illegal, but these types of bosses are known to ask these questions of people, asking about their sexual orientation, their religious beliefs. Those sorts of questions do not belong in any hiring practice, but I've seen and I know the toxic bosses that ask these questions. They feel like they are above the law. They're above the rule of the law. And if they're questioned on these, they'll deny these behaviors or they'll minimize the impact of these behaviors. Oh, you're just paranoid. Nobody's ever going to question me on that. And these are the types of bosses that can end up having human rights complaints filed against them. They can have bullying and harassment complaints filed. And these are serious allegations. So these bosses sometimes get what's coming to them. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they are so good at manipulating and managing up to the higher ups that they remain in the roles for a long time. But you need to get out from under a toxic, unethical corrupter, because they will make you look like an accomplice. They'll bring you along for the unethical ride. And that's a dangerous spot for you to be in because you're risking legal ramifications by doing so. So again, this type of boss abuses people's rights. They don't believe the law applies to them. Even when they're letting you go, I've heard stories about this type of toxic boss pushing someone to sign an NDA. You've got to sign this right now when they let you go. If you don't sign this right now, you're not going to get this package. And that is coercion and pressure. Everyone out there, and I'm telling you this, if you do get a package, just take the time. Say, I need some time to review this. I'm not in a headspace to review this now. I'm really shocked and I need some time to contemplate this and talk to others in my network. Talk to your lawyer, talk to your family. You should never be signing an NDA in the spot. And you need to be watching your rights and understanding your rights before signing an NDA. And a lot of these toxic bosses, from my research, they try to cut corners and not compensate people properly for their severance. So a lot of people say, I spent X number of years and I've done so much for this organization, and then I'm packaged out, and then they give me a really unfair package that doesn't even follow the employment laws. Again, that is terrible of these toxic bosses. And rest assured, you may have a case and you may have the ability to get what's fair out of them. And that will be a decision that you'll have to make, but don't sign it on the spot. Emotions are running too high, so the logical centers of your brain won't be functioning properly, nor may it be your area of expertise. A lot of us don't know employment law, and there's a lot to be learned even from a conversation with an employment lawyer. So there you go. In sum, the three brutal types of toxic bosses on Dr. Laura's agenda today: the dishonest manipulator, the great divider, and the unethical corrupter. Those are your unfriendly neighborhood toxic bosses that you do not want to come across. And if you have the unfortunate event of working for one of them, know that there is a light at the end of that tunnel, that you need to get away, that you can get away, and that there are better bosses out there. Even though you may be cynical about that right now, there are better ones out there. So I hope that this has been useful. I love to hear from you if this content is resonating, and please share with others who may benefit. And I hope that you stay well. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate and review the episode and share with others who may benefit. Visit me on my website at drlaura.live and sign up for my monthly e-newsletter full of tips and resources. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would be delighted to speak with you on your speaking needs. Stay well.